Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Making Sense of It All. Today, my guest is the owner of Pinhawk Golf, Aaron Banach. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, no problem, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
So, before we jump into everything, Pinhawk is unique in the golf industry. Tell my audience what you guys do.
Bottom line is we're a company that tries to fill niches in the industry. We're not going to crank out a regular set of cavity back irons, let's say, that everybody else has. Usually we try to see a void in the market, even if it's a relatively small one, and then fill it with equipment.
Very cool. I'll tell you, the void that you filled for me and where I discovered Pinhawk was in my search for single length irons. Um, it seems like that is what you're as far as most well known for, at least from what I can see. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's what put us on the map, without question, because we really came out with single length irons before it was popular, you might say, because Bryson came on the scene. Obviously, it exploded single length irons, but we came out with single length irons in 2010. So it was kind of, we weren't the first ones, which we could talk about at some point, but certainly early adopters, let's say.
No doubt. So I got to ask, what was it that inspired you in 2010 to do this? What was it? I mean, kind of walk me through kind of how you got there.
Sure. Well, I started what amounts to a club and component business in the early 2000s. Uh,
Okay.
and as far as like where Pinhawk entered the equation, that business was going well enough that I wanted to basically introduce my own brand. And I noticed that single length was something that wasn't really covered very much in the market. I don't know if you're familiar with Tommy Armour EQL irons.
I am, but why not for the audience, for the sake of the audience, why don't you kind of tell that story a little bit?
Sure, sure. That was a set of irons that Tommy Armour came out with in the late 80s. And in the 80s, Tommy Armour was a big brand. I mean, you could compare them to Callaway or TaylorMade in the 80s. So they came out with a single length set of irons, and bottom line is it flopped. They produced about 1 million sets is what people think, and the sales weren't there. Now, there's lots of reasons for that, but one big reason is in the mid 80s, they had an iron called the 845, the Silver Scott 845. Now, that iron was popular. They
Yes,
they
sir.
sold they sold a ton of those sets. That was kind of like piggybacking the Ping. Ping cavity back was the gold standard, and every that was like a game changer for game improvement irons. But the Silver Scott 845 was Tommy Armour's version, you might say, huge seller. Then, as they were kind of at the top of the market, they came out with single length irons. And the My Golf Spy has a good article on that too. They talk about if you were a salesman and you walked in the shop in the mid 80s and you had a 845 set and you had a single link set, what are they going to choose?
Right.
They want the hot seller. So bottom line is the EQL irons flopped, but we liked the technology. The technology was sound, we felt. And so we thought, let's add a modern twist to it and come out with it, and it worked.
Well, so I guess my question here is, what was it about it? Like in your own personal journey or in your own kind of your whether it's your own golf game or it's just your passion for the industry, what was it that made you feel like single link needed to be revisited?
Well, I would say the bottom line is that it made sense to me personally.
Yes.
Like, when I read about these irons, I'm like, I just don't, it all makes perfect sense to me. I don't understand why it didn't work, and then I looked into the marketing aspect of it and I see, okay, that's what happened there. Because
Hmm.
there's a lot of products that have been released, whether it's golf industry or not, that they're still good products, but they might flop. It
Sure.
it
No
just
doubt.
depends on the marketing and what's happening in the world at the time. But We liked the idea, and we thought, you know, because my other golf business was successful, I had the benefit, you might say, of dipping my toe in the water with it. I
Hmm.
didn't go, Tommy Armour made 1,000,000 sets. I didn't make 1,000,000 sets at the beginning. So that allowed it to, gain a little traction, which really helped.
So, and again, like for the sake of my audience that may not be savvy to the golf business, but they understand the business aspect of it. When you're talking about getting into making a set of clubs, there's a process to that. You've got to create molds, you've got to create kind of a template for these clubs. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, you have to work with a foundry overseas. That's the bottom line. Everybody wants American made products. The fact is, golf equipment is not made in the United States. Very few things are.
I can
So
agree. I can attest to that as well. Every single person I've ever talked to that's involved with club manufacturing, there is not one single company that goes from tip to tail in the United States, at
right.
least not today.
No, Ping used to. They were the last holdouts, and I do think they make some equipment in the US, but even their main equipment is made overseas now. So working with the foundry, telling the engineers the idea we had, making some tweaks, molds like you mentioned, and molds are expensive as you probably are aware. So it's not that it's not a risk to make your own brand of clubs, but we were connecting pretty well with the engineers, and the molds that came out first just needed a little tweaking, and then we were off.
So fast forward to 2015 and on, you've got a gentleman named Bryson DeChambeau that enters the public eye, first winning the U.S. Amateur and then going on during COVID to win a U.S. Open, and showing that it can be played successfully. I got to imagine that was an incredible shot in the arm for your brand.
It was huge. We were very happy with the sales up to that point, but like you said, Bryson comes on the scene. He wins, and it's interesting because there was steps to how popular the technology was, because he wins the USAM. Okay, you enter a few extra brains when you win the US Amateur,
No doubt.
and then he makes the tour. Well, I take that back. Before that, he was low am in the Masters. Okay,
Hmm.
I think he made the cut, finished 21st or something the next year. So now you've reached a few more brains. Then he makes the tour, which in my mind was the biggest jump, because you have the legitimacy of someone on the PGA Tour using single length irons. Nobody could ever, there's skeptics out there, but they couldn't take that away from you,
Right.
So,
No doubt.
PGA Tour, then he won the John Deere, which was, then now you have someone who won a tournament with single length irons. And then, of course, like you mentioned, the US Open. And that happened. It was interesting that happened in COVID too, because COVID in and of itself exploded the golf industry, because everybody knew they had to get outside, and they're taking up the sport. Then Bryson wins, and it was like a rocket ship.
No doubt, no doubt. I bring it up, and I try to paint the picture for the folks that are listening to this, because the golf industry to me is unlike many other industries. I guess sports you could say is unlike any other industry in the sense that people watch their heroes, or they watch people that they somewhat idolize on television. They see them playing a certain set of golf clubs or a certain type of equipment, and then they feel like they need to play it. It's very unlike other parts of life where, if like, just because I see somebody wearing a certain type of suit or a certain suit, it doesn't necessarily think that's going to look great on me. That's not how a lot of things work. But now I'm going to speak out of the other side of my mouth. I think what the Instagram and some of these in TikTok and some of these other things are proving to us is that influencers, whether they are celebrities or they're people on these social media platforms, it's proving that people people in effect do have a very sheep-like quality. We do like to follow what what other people are doing or what somebody we consider as popular is doing. So just to confirm the value of single length and the value of playing it, having somebody with the celebrity status of Bryson DeChambeau showing up every week on television or showing up on YouTube now as an influencer, there's a tremendous value to just qualifying the product set and saying, yes, this is good enough for you and I to play. Um, bef I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I will say this. My own personal journey, like, and the reason why I was even interested in talking about this in the first place is that I saw Bryson DeChambeau play in the U.S. Amateur in 2015. I am not a golfer by trade. I have been in sales and in the banking industry throughout my career. But what I saw was something that made sense, saying, I don't have that much time to practice. I don't have that much time to actually dedicate to golf. I can simplify this game and play it at a higher level theoretically by eliminating variables. And it made a heck of a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, no question. And that's what had entered the minds of people that hadn't even picked up golf yet. They're like, wait a second, this game didn't make a ton of sense to me before with so many different length clubs. One length makes a lot of sense, and that did absolutely help.
No doubt. Well, in a game where we haven't seen average handicaps come down in 30 plus years,
Mhm.
to me, like, and you probably have the data to either back this up or maybe it's one of those things that's kind of, still yet to be decided. But I got to imagine this is something that can simplify the game for people and you actually see a direct impact on their average scores or their golf handicap.
Yeah, I would say that's true. Even just from a junior perspective, like if you're teaching a kid, let's say, for example, I have a 10-year-old daughter. It doesn't make sense to me to teach them on anything other than single length because you don't want to overwhelm a kid early on
Hmm.
learning the game. I mean, I've had to teach my daughter two swings basically, an iron swing and a driver swing.
Right.
So that simplifies the game for her. And then when they get better, if they want to go to a traditional set, that's fine. But a lot of kids are going to stick with single length, I believe.
No, I think that's a great point. And so, I mean, to me, I mean, it hits kids, it hits the market of golfers that want to be better at the game or more competitive at it without trying to overwhelm themselves with practicing different clubs and different length clubs. Um, in my mind, I would think to me this is one of those simple choices, or this is one of those things that there's kind of there's a fact-based answer. You can compare the two methods and figure out which one is better for you.
For
Why
sure.
why do you feel like there hasn't been a larger adoption of single length clubs in the marketplace, especially with
Well,
amateurs?
yeah, I think that it's traditionalists out there, they don't like change. It's usually a lot of, I hate to say it, but older players that don't like single length. They just have grown up with traditional length irons. They can't make sense of it. Uh, you know, Before Bryson came along, they'd say you'll never see that on the tour.
Right.
Of course, Bryson shattered that, but and even Bryson himself, he's polarizing. Some people don't like him, and they kind of will throw single length irons, the baby out with the bathwater a
Fair.
little, and that's pretty much all I can come to as the reasons. I will say this too, though, and it's a little bit of a hot take, I guess, about single length irons. If you have a slow swing speed, it is difficult to get the long irons elevated in the air. When I say long irons in air quotes, 4, 5, 6 iron that is at a 7 iron length, you do have to have a swing speed that is decent enough to elevate the ball with those irons.
So let's
So,
talk about that because you guys
sure.
have actually provided a solution for this as well.
Yeah, that's why we came out with the Vertex irons, because that is in our eyes the best of both worlds, because it essentially makes your long irons one little bit longer length, and then the, I guess you, if you would call them the scoring irons, all, 7 iron length. And that, that can really help. Like, let's say you have an older player that just cannot elevate a 37-inch 4 iron. Well, they can do it with the Vertex. So I do think what will happen sometimes is maybe someone will try out single length irons, maybe someone that just doesn't have a higher swing speed, and they're like, this doesn't work. I can't get I'm worm burning with my 4 iron. Well, it's not really understanding the physics of what's happening.
Right. So, all right, I'm going to get a little golf nerdy right now because I think
Sure.
that other people have tried to solve this with changing lie angles, with changing offset, with changing different parts of the structure of the actual golf club, even changing the shaft in the long irons.
Hmm.
But then you start to take away some of the value of what single length is supposed to represent and the consistency of playing the same thing. Do you feel like some of that has kind of gone away from the purpose, or do you feel like it's just like you said, it serves another niche or it serves another population of the golf community?
Yeah, I think you're right about it's if you're manipulating the clubs a lot, you're kind of defeating the purpose. It's diminishing returns. Like, there are companies that will change, like Edel made single length for a while, and they've tried to fix the long iron problem with, like you said, shaft manipulation, kick point, things like that. And I'm not saying that doesn't work to an extent, but now you're getting almost different components for different clubs and within a set. So that you have to kind of plant your flag in one camp or another. And ours is keep everything the same.
Yeah, absolutely. One other question I have on that, and I'll go to the other side of the bag as far as the short game. Um, you get so many of these companies that have almost created specialized wedges, or talk about the short game as a totally different component of the game. And they sell products because of it, but it's like you've got specialty grinds on wedges, all of these things to hit different shots. Now, when you go to a single length, when you go to a wedge that is not necessarily specialized, but it looks like the rest of your set, do you feel like it eliminates some of those, like some of those choices around the green, or do you feel like it's just adjustments essentially to the way that somebody is swinging, or keeping it the same as what they're doing? It's actually you're actually complicating it less because you're giving them less to think about.
Yeah, I see both sides,
Okay,
because you can some people aren't comfortable with longer wedges around the green. They don't like it. Even you can even watch commentators when they're following Bryson, they'll kind of rip on him around the green a little bit, like, oh, he's got a 37-inch sand wedge here hitting it out of the sand. And of course, Bryson does fine.
right. He hits it to 6 inches.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of ridiculous for them to say things like that, because it depends on the person. There's someone that can uh, hone what they're doing. It's not that there's not adjustments with single length irons. There's adjustments with any set that you're gonna.
Sure.
But I also see the other side where, um, like, a lot of our customers, they'll use like one traditional wedge in their
Right.
bag. You know what I mean? They'll maybe for full swings they'll use the single length wedges, but if they want to get technical around the green, they'll have their 35.5-inch Vokey or whatever. So it's each individual's decision.
So you mentioned early in this, and I agree with you. I think people have to figure out what's best for them, and I would challenge people, if they're playing the game of golf, if they're taking it up, to actually truly look at what's best for them, not what Roy McIlroy's playing, not what Tiger Woods is playing, not what somebody who is incredibly talented and has every single day of their life to play golf 8 to 10 hours a day is doing. Do what's best for you.
Mhm.
You mentioned that your equipment that you guys sell fills a void in the marketplace. Are there other products that you guys sell that also fill additional voids within the golf marketplace?
Yeah. Well, for example, we talked about the Vertex irons, which
Yes,
is,
sir.
the Vertex irons are interesting because we recognized the quote problem with single length irons. It came out with the Vertex. We were the only company that had those for a while, but now I don't know if you've heard of the brand Avoda. That is Bryson's brand. Well, I shouldn't say his brand. That's the clubs he's using now.
I'm sure he's got a piece of it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's speculation as to what he's got going with that company, but everybody was talking about his 3D printed irons and all that this last Masters, but which were this Avoda brand? Well, guess what Avoda just came out with? Dual length irons. So, we kind of feel proud of the fact that we were a little bit of a market leader in that product. So that would be one. Um, we're pretty excited right now about a putter we have. It's called the Deadbolt. And what it is it's a reverse arm lock putter.
Okay.
So like if you're familiar with a regular arm lock putter, let's assume you're right-handed. I know you're left-handed, but let's say you're right-handed. You're going to use what you call your lead arm to anchor it to the shaft. Now, now that works certainly for people. You see it on tour, but for some people, it's really uncomfortable to like anchor to your lead arm. So what we came out with was the deadbolt, which is built to anchor to your trail arm or
Okay.
your right arm, you could call it your dominant arm. It feels more comfortable. You have more control. People that buy this putter absolutely love it, and that's probably our most exciting product right this second, just because of the traction it's gaining.
Okay.
And we're the only ones that have anything like that on the market.
Well, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. I mean, when people talk about putting when you first are starting, a lot of the time somebody will tell you it's like rolling a ball underhand, and they try to.
Exactly.
So theoretically, you're allowing that player to truly feel like that dominant hand or their throwing arm, if you will, is just rolling a ball underhand, and they're not having to focus on uh, creating a pendulum between two arms or thinking about it as, how much power am I giving it with both arms? Do I, to again, a lot of thoughts that create a lot of confusion in the brain, and not again the whole goal of simplicity is met with this product because you're allowing somebody to think just roll it with one arm just like you throw a
Exactly.
ball.
Exactly. And what's exciting about a product like that for us is you can have the highest level players that struggle with putting.
Mm-hmm.
It's Scotty Scheffler had an issue. He's doing fine now, obviously, but he went through a stretch where he could not putt. Morikawa couldn't putt for a while, and it's like the the exciting thing about it, and this is what it's like for a small brand. All of a sudden, you could have a pro pick up your product because they're desperate or what. They don't care about uh, endorsements or anything. They just want to put the ball in the hole.
No
And
doubt.
that's what's exciting about a product that's different. There's always the chance of that happening.
No, I think that's 100% correct. And like you said, they don't care what the brand is.
No,
They're making money playing the game of golf. So whatever is going to allow them to get the ball in the hole with the least amount of strokes is going to be what puts food on their kids' table, what allows them to get to the next tournament, whatever it is. That's the goal, period.
exactly.
As few strokes as possible to get the ball into that hole.
That's right.
So golf industry wise, like you said, COVID really did put some rocket fuel behind the industry. It got people back used to playing the game of golf or interested in playing the game of golf. As of 2024, the year we're in now, where do you see things going? Do you see things continuing to increase? Do you see things plateauing? Do you see things declining? Where is the game of golf going as of now, as we've come out of COVID and back into somewhat normalcy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the gain from COVID is still carrying over somewhat. We have not really seen a huge downturn since COVID. I mean, I think it introduced enough new people to the game. I'm sure we've lost some because let's face it, it's a hard game. But from our perspective, sales have been steady, both domestic and abroad. I think really a thing nowadays too is like even for kids, you don't want them. Everybody knows how you shouldn't be glued to a screen, and
Right.
I think we're kind of getting into that more, and the fact that we got to get our kids outside and you got to get them into something. Junior programs in our area are packed, still gaining traction. So I think these juniors that are getting into the game, they're your future customers. So I believe I have no worries about the future of the golf industry. I will say this though, the PGA and live stuff is kind of frustrating because if that continued, it would eventually hurt things. I mean,
Right.
you're going to lose people, that people just aren't, they're not interested in this kind of conflict right now. They just want to watch the best players in the world play together. And it just, although it's not affecting equipment sales right now, if it stays this way, I think it would.
Well, I don't disagree, and I think that it takes the focus off of the game of golf and it puts it onto it. Really, honestly, I think it puts it on the cash that these people are making or that they're not making, and it makes it a. I think people as a whole they start getting this feeling of, you know, these people on television don't look like me. I can't relate to them anymore. And I think the further you go in that direction, the less interest people have in watching and rooting for people. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think that I think it's detrimental to the game, and I hope they figure it out soon.
Yeah. I mean, you think about like a tournament, obviously people are going to watch the majors, but you take a tournament that is not popular. It used to be I don't even personally watch tournaments that aren't majors anymore. I'm
Right.
so bored by it, and it's like I want when is before Live came along, I would watch a regular tournament because everybody was there, you know.
Right.
But now I'm like, well, you got half the players at a John Deere Classic. I'd rather do something else, and that will and I'm in the golf industry.
Right.
So what is, a common consumer going to do? They're not going to watch. So something's got to give. They need to figure it out.
Well, and the common consumer is going like if the common consumer gives way, then that means that the advertisers are going to give way, and then you're not going to have the cash behind the tournaments in order to have the tournaments. So I think, what you're saying, you could theoretically end up with a lot less golf to watch if this continues in this direction. Either that or they're going to be playing for purses that are much smaller on a weekly basis, and you're going to only have, you're going to have your majors, and then you're going to have some other events that command a large purse. So it's ironic because it's like almost like the game could eat itself.
Yep, exactly. I agree. I think they'll figure it out, but they need to get on with it.
Agreed. Totally agreed. So people listening to this, they're starting to, if they have any interest, if it's creating, a buzz in their mind. I know you guys are a wholesaler essentially. You guys are selling through distributors, correct?
Right, right. Yeah, now, there's different ways of selling clubs. There's, direct to consumer is huge right now. I know you had Jason Hyland on your show not too long ago. He's uses sub 70s direct to consumer. Think of
Yes, sir.
new levels direct to consumer. We are not of the mindset to do that, at least right now, because the reason why a distributor model makes sense to us still is there are still club builders out there in the United States that these are either mom and pop places or they're fitters, these green grass places that they want product to
Yes.
fit and sell. So that's been successful so far, and we're hesitant to go to direct to consumer for that reason.
Well, and I think that there's value to there's values and there's markets for all approaches. So to me, I think that especially when I think about if I'm going to go to a single link set of golf clubs, I want to make sure that it fits. I want to make sure that everything is correct because it's going to be from lob wedge up to 4 iron or whatever the set is that I choose to take. And so I think fit is very important in this. I think if this is kind of a, as you talk about going into niche markets or as you talk about filling voids, a lot of the time it's because somebody has something in their hands that right now is not working for them. So I
Right.
think that there's a huge value in making sure that the next thing that they choose truly fits what they're looking for.
Yeah, no question. And it's not like direct to consumer is bad because
No doubt.
I mean I heard like in your interview with Jason, he said, when it comes down to it, it's not brain surgery. And that is true. I mean, there a lot of times when you play with someone and they're playing poorly, you can almost identify just one thing they're doing wrong. So being fit even over the internet is still viable if they tell you what they're doing. They know what they like. They know what they don't like. It's still a legit way of doing business. There's no question, but fitting is still in person is still pretty important.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that you're right. I mean, there's a huge component that can be done with technology in today's market. If you get on a TrackMan, if you've got a video, if you've got high speed video, there's a lot that can be done remotely, and I think that that's a tremendous benefit to technology in 2024. Um, that being said, again, just like what we've talked about, there are niches, there are different people, there are different approaches, and it's not a one size fits all marketplace. It's you got to be able to meet people where they are as well.
No question.
All right, so if people want to learn more, if people would like to get more information on Pinhawk and on yourself, where can they find info on Pinhawk?
Best bet is to go to pinhawkgolf.com. There you can look at the products. You can find distributors. We do have a website redesign coming soon because we have a new product coming out within a couple months now. It's called the Resolution Hybrids. And we're pretty excited about those. And those obviously aren't on the website because they're not released yet. So we're going to have a redesign. But for now, pinhawkgolf.com.
Excellent. And I'm sure there will be more to come on the Revolution hybrids, and I look forward to learning more. For now, Aaron, I really appreciate you joining the show, and I am excited to see what's next for Pinhawk.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jesse.